Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome to Sinister Radio, where the ordinary twists into the eerie. Tonight, I invite you on a journey down a long, dark road, where kindness from a stranger is your only hope out of the darkness. A light in the distance may be what you've been praying for, but what if the stranger who welcomes you has been waiting for you all along? I suggest you listen closely, because sometimes the help you seek is the most dangerous of all. So dim the lights, settle in, and let the darkness in. The story I am about to tell you is about a man whose night is about to take a dark turn. Before the night is over, he'll probably wish he'd stayed on that dark road. Let's begin. Evan hadn't seen his father in nearly 15 years. A few weeks earlier, a letter had arrived in the mail, scrawled in his father's handwriting. It was vague, asking him to come visit him in the small town Evan barely remembered from his childhood. Evan's dad wanted to leave the past behind and be a part of his life again. After a long day's drive, Evan was on the final stretch. For miles the gas gauge had been blinking because the need of fuel, but he hadn't seen a gas station in hours. The engine finally gave out, and Evan stopped the car right on the desolate road, surrounded by miles of dense forest. He cursed under his breath as he pulled out his phone. No signal. The darkness pressed in around him, swallowing the empty road, as he looked down both directions, hoping for headlights. There was only silence, broken by the distant chirping of crickets and the occasional rustle of unseen animals in the woods. With no other options, he turned on the flashlight on his phone and began to walk. He had passed a turnoff a while back, and he figured it must lead to some kind of homestead. After about 20 minutes, he saw it, a sprawling, dilapidated farm. The glow of a single, flickering porch light illuminating the worn exterior. He approached the farmhouse. He could see the outline of a barn in the distance. Beyond the barn, there were other smaller structures and some rusty farming equipment half buried in overgrown weeds. His flashlight from his phone cut through the darkness, landing on a large stain on the ground near the front porch. The stain was dark and viscous, trailing off into the tall grass. As though something had been dragged toward the barn. Evan's gut twisted, but he needed help. He decided to check the house first and found the front door slightly open. Evan knocked on the door. "Hello, is anyone home? My car broke down and I need help." Silence greeted him and the house remained dark. It creaked as he pushed it, revealing a dark hallway. He stepped inside, scanning the walls with his flashlight. The place was eerily silent, the air thick and the oppressive silence seemed to weigh on him. But it was the door to the basement that drew him, slightly ajar and leading into a pitch-black void. As Evan stood at the top of the stairs, behind the slightly open door, a faint sound reached his ears, a low, muffled moan, almost like someone struggling to breathe. In that moment the light was turned on and a man was standing in the kitchen with him pointing a gun at him. The man's face etched with irritation and demanded, "What are you doing in my house at this hour?" Evan replied, his voice trembling with fear, "I am sorry. I didn't mean to just enter your house. My car broke down, and I need help." The man in front him lowered his weapon, and the aggressive expression on his face shifted into a smile, one that sent a chill through Evan, leaving him deeply unsettled. "I am Ben, nice to meet you. You can sleep here for the night, and you can call for help in the morning." Although the thought of having to sleep there made him uneasy, he didn't know what else to do. Ben now noticed the door to the basement was slightly ajar. He looked at Evan with a strange smile and then walked past him to close the door beside him. As Evan was laying sleepless in the guest room with his eyes wide open, he couldn't stop thinking about the sounds he heard coming from the basement, the way the man looked at him, and most of all, the stains outside, as though something had been dragged toward the barn. He couldn't stay here. Evan grabbed his phone and quietly walked out the door to the hallway. As he walked past the kitchen, he looked at the door to the basement. He hesitated, his heart was racing, but his curiosity pushed him forward. He opened the door slowly and descended the stairs, his flashlight illuminating a small, cramped basement cluttered with piles of old tools and crates. Then he saw it, a figure tied to a chair in the corner. Their heads slumped forward, their body covered in bruises and cuts. Evan's blood ran cold as he realized it was a man, barely alive. His breath shallow and ragged. The man's eyes fluttered open, and he let out a weak, rasping sound, his mouth trying to form words. But before Evan could approach, a sound echoed through the basement, the creak of the floorboards above. Evan froze. The man upstairs was awake. He turned off his flashlight, standing perfectly still as the footsteps moved slowly across the floor above. Panic seized him by the thought of getting caught by the man upstairs. What if he came down to the basement? He moved back toward the stairs, hoping to get out of the house before he got caught. But as he did, he heard another sound, a low, gurgling noise coming from behind him. Evan turned, aiming the flashlight back at the man in the chair, and for a moment, he could swear he saw the man's mouth stretching into a grotesque smile, his eyes wide with a strange, twisted glee. A sudden loud crash from upstairs jolted him back to the present. He scrambled up the stairs, his footfalls barely masked by the sound of heavy boots thundering through the house. He pushed open the basement door, emerging into the hallway, his heart hammering in his chest. But as he crossed the threshold, he stopped for a moment. The barn doors outside were now wide open, revealing a cage containing something or someone that writhed and shuddered in the dim moonlight. Evan squinted, trying to make out what he was seeing. His stomach lurched as he realized the cage held a person, twisted and contorted, the person's face gaunt and hollow, eyes staring out at him with a pleading desperation that made him stop breathing for a second. The sound of footsteps behind him yanked him from his horror-struck trance. He turned and saw a tall figure standing in the doorway. The man's face was shadowed, but Evan could see the glint of a blade in his hand. It was Ben. He was grinning, his teeth bared like an animal, his eyes gleaming with a sinister delight. Evan took a step back, but the man in front him advanced, raising the blade. He stumbled, and the man grabbed him. Evan fought, desperate to break free, but he was stronger. His face was now inches from Evan's. The man leaned in and whispered, "You should have stayed in your room, waited until it was your turn." Evan's screams echoed through the night, reverberating off the dense forest that encircled the farm. Yet no one was there to hear them. By the time dawn arrived, the farm was silent once again. The barn doors shut tight and the evilness hidden in the shadows. Only the flickering porch light remained, a silent witness to the horrors that lay within. And somewhere in the depths of the farmhouse, a new figure was tied to a chair, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to stumble upon that cursed place. Thank you for listening and for joining us on tonight's journey down a long, dark road that unfortunately led to the wrong door to ask for help and the deadly cost of trusting the wrong stranger. Our time together in the dark has come to an end, but remember, the night never truly sleeps. So join us again, if you dare, when we return with more stories to keep you awake. Until then, sleep tight and sweet dreams, and try not to let the darkness creep in. We'll be waiting for you till next time, right here on Sinister Radio.